I have bought the UK's cheapest Alfa Romeo Giulietta Cloverleaf, but there is an issue. So I bought this car off Facebook Marketplace, £1,800, which I don't think is too bad. The catch though was that it was using coolant. Didn't know at the time where it was coming from, so it was a bit of a gamble. In the first episode, I started going through the basics and I ended up doing a compression test, which indicated an issue with possibly cylinder 3, and then a cylinder leak down test on cylinder 3 confirmed the issue as there were bubbles coming from the expansion tank. So the next step is to remove the cylinder head on this thing and see what the hell is going on. So to start with, right hand wheel is off and the arch liner is out of the way. We then got to get rid of the accessory drive belt, so that's done and out of the way. Then working from underneath on the downpipe, straight away, rusty nuts. No one likes rusty nuts. So using hammers, easy out tools, anything I can get hold of, just to try and get the nuts off from the downpipe to the midsection. And eventually we are there. And the fluids out of this so the oil is drained, and then I'm setting the number 1 cylinder up top dead center. Smashing in a couple of Wendy worms, giving me that sugar rush ready to tackle the under trays, and every single bolt was either corroded, the clip snapped, or the bolt heads themselves sheared off. Absolute nightmare, just cheap quality from Alfa Romeo on this one. Clean the engine from the top then, pretty much everything off, coolant lines, ancillary bits and pieces, coil packs, the whole airbox assembly I ended up just taking out, moving it out of the left hand side. There are a lot of connections, a lot of nuts and bolts and little harness bits and pieces. It really does take quite a lot of time. Then it was the fueling system off, so the high pressure fuel pump out of the way, and then started on the inlet manifold. And as I've lifted this manifold off, look at this sealing ring here on number 4. I kid you not. There is a cable tie wedged in between. I haven't snipped one, dropped one, anything like that. That, I don't know how, is kind of being sealing, I guess, somewhere like that. There it is. There's a little, if it's gonna line up, there's a little compression mark just there where that's been pinched and sealed against that face. So that certainly can't help with running conditions at all. So a little bit of a progress update. It is definitely a lot slower than I anticipated. A few fiddly little bits here and there and hose clamps and stuff. So I still have the injectors to unplug from the fuel rail underneath there. And then I think that back face is pretty much ready to go. On top, I've still got to get this little oil segregator valve piece off. I think that's like a PCV valve there, so that black piece will come off the top of the head there. A couple of hoses left on the thermostat down there to do, and then it's tackling the front end here with the exhaust heat shield and downpipe with lambda sensors, which may be a little bit tricky. And then once that's done, it's just a case of timing up this engine, making sure it is perfectly at top dead center on number 1, locking the crank off, and then using special tools on the camshaft to then make sure we are perfectly timed to get the cam bout off, and then the cylinder head should come off. I am noticing with all the coolant passages, there's a lot of this like red orangey sludge. Now it is a orangey red coolant, however, I'm not sure, has someone put some sort of like radiator weld or head gasket sealant in this coolant system, because it's like sludgy putty. This car keeps on giving. Snap manifold bolts just sat left in there, so that one wasn't even doing anything. It's literally just sat in there, like I say, doing nothing. So someone's definitely been in here before. A couple of them were only like finger tight, not even torqued at all. This is getting rather worrying now, because someone may have already had a look at an issue and has put it all back together. Now, I'm not saying it was the guy I bought it off, but yeah, someone's definitely done a shifty one here. And I've just found another one as well, which you gotta laugh, because it just blows your mind how dodgy some people are. Take a look at this. So this is your aircon compressor unit. That is part of the auxiliary belt circuit. So there's no mounting bolt that runs through that lower piece just there. The upper one does have that bolt running there, but it's snapped off. So this is just floating there, and that has the auxiliary belt tensioned against it as well. How dodgy are people these days just to try and sell on stuff? I mean, I've bought an absolute stinker of a car here. I genuinely have. It is shocking. So, second take at this. Next day, I had to go home. This thing absolutely beat me yesterday. and I had to get to the pub. So I didn't film the final bit of progress before I left, so I'll just give a quick update now. The vacuum pump is off of the exhaust cam and the inlet cover is off, or intake cover is off. So that is ready for the timing tools to go in a second. I did notice when I was running the car up before I pulled the pin and purchased this car that the heater matrix, or the line going in, was nice and warm. The line out was stone cold. I had good aircon, but I didn't have warm air coming through the heaters. So I suspect, now that I've seen all of this sludge and gunk coming out of the cooling system, I reckon the heater matrix is blocked, basically. Most likely with that residue stuff. If I just show you over here, there's some sort of stat or whatever it is. If you see the color of that there. The exhaust manifold is loose. Of the studs that are left in the block, 2 of them have come out of the block with the nut. 2 of them have actually snapped off, previous owner. So I am kind of dreading this a little bit, what I am going to find. So that is the top cover off. So we can now have a good look at the camshafts, the first look. Now the running surfaces are nice and clean and they don't look to be gouged out or worn away or pitted badly, which is a good sign. However, all of the oil surfaces, they're very, very dark oil. Hopefully you can see that on the camera. It almost looks like it's scorched, or the oil's had a very hard time, especially in like these pathways here. It's almost like crispy. I'm a little bit worried and concerned maybe this was run for a bit of time with quite low oil. The timing tool in the exhaust there, nice big plate, and then the same for the inlet there. A little bit concerning. I'm at the point now where I can take the tension off the belt and loosen these cam lobe gears, so then I can get the belt off. However, I have just noticed something with the tensioner. So this is my tensioner just in front of you, and there is a little arrow dial indicator point, which is just there, if you can make it out on the camera. Now you loosen that bolt up there, push this tab up to tension it, and then you torque the bolt, which locks it in place and tensions the belt. Now that little arrow, that little stubby arrow, which is just there, should be all the way up by the hole in the above that slot up there. So this belt isn't even tensioned correctly. If you look at that with my finger, you do that. Has this caused damage to the valves, timing, not having this belt correctly torqued? I don't know, but look at that. Look at that. Can you see me moving that? What an absolute joke. I know I'm probably sounding a little bit doom and gloom. I mean, you have to laugh, but what has been done correctly on this car and what the hell is going on with it? Let's hope I've gotten away with it, and with that belt being timed up right but just slack, hopefully it hasn't caused any other damage. Next step is to loosen off the pulleys, the cam pulleys. There's one. Oh my god. There's 2. The intake wasn't as tight as the exhaust, so in theory now this belt should come off because these should be slack. Ah yes, they do, so they do move. Perfect. So this is the pump that has just come off the car. Plastic impeller. It's made by SKF, so it is a decent, reputable brand. However, I have noticed a few things straight away. The first one being the noise it makes as I spin it in the casing. Ready? It does look new, you can vouch for that, like there's no grime on that plastic impeller. However, it is pretty alarming what I've seen on the cylinder head block side where this pump goes into. Now this car, as with many with different facelifts and model generations, have VIN specific or chassis specific pumps at certain ages. Have I got the wrong pump installed on this? Because look at the markings on the inside of here. So this brown orangey colour is like stained from the cooling system. And then, as you can see here, it is
polished, so I'm thinking there's been an interference fit here. Luckily the water pump hasn't got a metal impeller, because that would have absolutely mullered this face. The plastic one has just started to polish it more than anything. That is the only explanation for it. A noisy water pump. It sounds pretty harsh now on the bearing spinning, so I guess maybe that had been too tight up against it and it's been working hard. Maybe it's put too much tension and force on the bearing. I'm just surmising here, but from what I'm looking at there, it's definitely a good idea to have that one replaced with a genuine new one. So I think I'm finally at the stage of just undoing all the head bolts and this head assembly coming off. So place your bets then, what is going to be the damage? I do not know what to expect now. Like I say, hoping for just a blown gasket across the one face, but from what I've seen so far, is there going to be some slightly bent valves? Has this been apart already? Who bloody knows? Here we go, let's get into it. Number one. Not too bad at all. I was expecting a bit more from that. 2. That's not that tight either. There we go, there's what I was expecting, a bit of a snap. So I've unwound them all now, there's no tension on them, so now I'm going to just whiz them off. Normally label these head bolts so they go back in the same place, however these are replacement items, so they're like stretch bolts, one-time use, so just get them out and they're actually going to go in the bin. Oh, she's a heavy girl. Oi oi oi. Bloody hell, I need to get to the gym. Hey, look at the state of that water jacket. That is absolutely minging. So that's definitely had some of that head gasket stuff in there. Someone's just bodged it, fired a load in that. As I suspected from seeing the coolant hoses and all the bits and pieces coming off, it is filled to the brim with it. Disgusting. So look at these marks on piston number 1. Exhaust side there, see the colour change? That to me looks like possibly something's fallen down there, or possibly a valve has touched at some point. So these divot cuts out are where the valve should go. The fact that it's inside there, maybe a spark plug or something's happened at some point and it has been mashing up against there. And cylinder number 3 has got a mark in between the two valves just down there, which you might not be able to see it. It's taken a lot of time to get this head off, and I'm now going to get the first genuine look, roll it on its side and see if there's any obvious damage to this head. Right, let's go up. Right, here we go then. Please, please, please. So this is cylinder number 3 here, and I'm pretty sure I found the issue with the head gasket. As you can see around pretty much all of it, you've got this dark ring sealing face that goes along all the way around until you get to this top corner piece here, where this dark grey stain is blown away from about there to about here. And that little wear mark there, the little blow by clean piece back there to there, would then go straight into the water jacket, and that is why when we pressurised the cylinder, it was then leaking out of the gasket there into the water jacket, and then we were getting the bubbles in the expansion tank. Also, once again, as you'd expect, we have quite a lot of that red horrible sealant in these parts of the jacket. Let's get this gasket off and have a look underneath. So it's a multi-layer gasket. Take that off and put to the side. And with the head gasket removed, once again, you can sort of see the shiny point there to there. So that is a strong indication that the head gasket has failed, which is good news. At least we have found a fault. I drove this car for probably an hour to get home, very, very steady, but I cannot believe it didn't overheat. Bang on 90 to be fair to it on the gauge, but look, I know I've harped on about it before, but these passageways are absolutely caked in it. Does anyone know the best fix for trying to get this stuff now out of the cylinder head and out of the whole engine, out of the whole cooling system? Or is it just the laborious task of filling the car up with, say, water, warming it up, and then just flushing it out and just constantly doing cycles like that to try and break it down? Let me know in the comments. And in regards to any damage to the cylinder head itself, so far, Cylinder 1 looks okay. There's a few tiny little pit marks there. Cylinder 3 does have a mark, and it's just there, if you can see that. There's a tiny little nick there also. The valve should seat past there, so that's not in the contact patch of it. I wonder if there's been a spark plug electrode tip that's maybe cracked, or some sort of debris gone down there. If a valve had gone, I would have maybe expected a little bit more damage on the piston. So I thought this was a steel cylinder head, but it is actually alley. So obviously that's magnetic. Alley, but then the block is steel. Right, here we go. So that is actually looking very nice in there. So got away with that. Whoever's done whatever, it hasn't skagged the edge of the bore and dragged whatever it was upwards. And same with number 4. Obviously number 4 is mint anyway, but yeah, absolutely clean in there. So in terms of pistons and bore for the block, it is looking promising. Ugh. Disgusting. So loads of built up oil sediment and just grime in the end of the pulleys, the variator pulleys. So this definitely won't be helping with oil getting through the camshaft and into here via the solenoid. I think with this all clogged up, it's definitely not going to help with variable valve timing, which is what basically these pulleys do. Right then, so back on the Alfa. So almost a week's passed since I've last touched it. The cylinder head has gone away to be soda blasted, as it's an aluminium head. Conventional like blast and stuff, you've got to be careful, you don't want to pit it and damage the surface, because obviously that head was hanging, so fingers crossed it should come back almost new. At the same time, it's going to have the valves out, clean those up, because it's a direct injection engine, so they're pretty coked up naturally. And I've also got a parts delivery, so let's have a look what I've got. So huge thank you to Alfa Workshop. These guys do genuine and non-genuine Alfa bits. Super helpful, replied to emails really quickly as well, and obviously dispatch times were second to none. So thank you very much, guys. A bit of an all sorts box really. Got an auxiliary belt, top gasket for like the oil segregator, new sump plug washer. I am going to do probably a second oil flush on this, just because it looked pretty minging in there. I'll probably put some cheap oil in to start with, run it, get it hot, and then we'll dump that out and put some fresh in. I have a pretty hefty gasket set, so that should cover me on all bases when I go to put this thing back together. I also have a genuine water pump, and there is a VIN split and chassis split, so I reckon, looking at the marks on that cylinder head, it did have the wrong water pump on it. And this is a turbo oil feed pipe. Now, I wasn't aware until I bought this car and did a bit of research. This is an early spec car, and the original pipe didn't have this sort of protective heat shield management cover on it. In some cases on this earlier engine with the older style pipe, it doesn't have any protection on, and the turbo gets very hot, as you can imagine. So there are points where turbos have failed from just oil passageways in the banjo bolts and the pipe causing issues. So basically there's a retrofit of the newer version. I think it was from maybe 2016 they retrofitted these new with Alfa. But yeah, so this is a genuine product. You get banjos and new washers, so that could be a bolt on and off replacement. I'm definitely going to have a go at cleaning this up. I'm thinking for the water jacket, coolant side, maybe a syringe and just try and get most of this out of here. And then a light bit of rubbing on the block, I think. A side-by-side comparison of the old one versus the new. And like I said previously, there is no protection on this. So a little bit of braid there around the banjo eyelet. And then it's just a hard pipe. So next up on the list is going to be removing this ugly old crash bar. Damaged from a previous accident, I'm guessing. But yeah, pretty bodgy of whoever had this before and has kind of hidden it and left it on. On the plus side though, second-hand one from eBay was £40 delivered. So you can't go wrong with that, can you? That one's about as straight as Elton John. Let's get the new one on. Now this is a little overwhelming, but the majority of the bits are back from being cleaned and prepared, ready to be put back onto the car. So this is the upper cylinder head part that holds the vernier pulleys and the camshafts, and this looks incredible now. And the cylinder head itself with the rockers and valves are now looking almost brand new. So I've got a few little jobs to do before these can be put back together and onto the car itself. So that is both Vernier pulleys cleaned out, all the little areas airlined as well for the oil passageways, and then new seals on the end of the camshafts. They go in dry, and then the sealant face gasket will come up to that corner there and run along the channel there and sort of all clamped together. Now that they're all cleaned out, they should work a lot better. Hoping they don't need to be replaced because they are rather expensive. And now we have the cylinder head back, and oh my god, what a difference. So I think it was about 17 kilograms of soda was used. So this is an aluminium head and the top cover as well. So you don't want to damage the components because aluminium is typically a lot softer. So yeah, soda blasting was used and it looks almost like new now. All the valves have been out and they've had a decoke because this is a direct injection, and they were hanging. Absolutely rammed full of carbon, so this should run a lot better now. Also, the rockers have been out, cleaned up and all lubricated, so they are good to go, and we have brand new valve stem oil seals as well, clean. Right, so we're at the stage now where I think I'm going to put the head gasket on the block and lift this portion of the cylinder head onto the car and bolt it down. And then once that's bolted down, torqued down correctly, I can then lift the cams onto the top part of this head, and that way it's not as heavy. And then time for our gasket. The dowels are already in the block, in the corners, and this should have a top, so that should sit on. Oh, just caught in the dowels, just like that. So I've just cleaned the bottom of the cylinder head. We are pretty much ready now to lift on. We got brand new cylinder head bolts because these are stretch items. So let's spin those in. I'm going to go with this gasket manufacturer's recommendation as it isn't a genuine gasket. Let's compress it the way they say it needs to be compressed. Now so let's start. Next is 29 foot-pound. Same process, just clamping it down a little tighter. I'm now going to loosen these off 90 degrees before then retightening down by the same torque as earlier, the 29 foot-pound. Now it's time to do the 3 sets of 90 degrees. Fucking hell, they're tight, aren't they? A little bit of a sweat on with the 3/8 torque wrench. A half would probably be a bit better to get the leverage, but we've done it. So now it's time to put the upper part on. So that is the top part of the cylinder head on, securing the camshafts down. Tools are locked in at both ends here. How good does that look? It almost looks brand new. Night and day difference to what it looked like originally. Soda blasting truly has saved this. It looks mint. So next step is to fit the water pump. It is nice and smooth, whereas the last one was a squeaky old thing. So this should rectify that fault, knowing that we've got a genuine correct part. And this pump is definitely not hitting inside impeller wise, because as I spin it, there's no noise of scraping or anything. So with a nice new tensioner on, surprise surprise, it is now holding it taut and tight. The top pulleys are taut down tight. So the tensioner is at maximum. I'm going to rotate the engine over twice. Then I'm going to loosen the tensioner off to the set point, which is where a little hole is, and then rotate the engine round to top dead center again, and then make sure our timing still is all okay. If it is okay, the tools in the end of the camshaft should fit in no problem. And at that point, you know you are timed up perfectly. So intake camshaft first. Please fit. Yes, come on. And then for the exhaust one, it's a bit of a beefier thing this, but hopefully this should fit in first time. So it's in. The exhaust one is a few mil off, like tiny. So what I'm going to do is just release the pulley on the exhaust only, and then get this lined up again and retighten it, and then check it again. I mean, it is fractionally off.
With the timing sorted, it was now time to start putting other bits back together. New gasket, new spark plug, pair of variable valve timing solenoids. The old ones, the gauzes were missing on a couple of the screens, and also contamination with real poor oil quality. This cannot have been helping with the pool running and variable valve timing.
And just like that, it is pretty much back together. Well, 99%. I've broken a couple of little clips that need to be rectified, and I'm waiting on a couple of little bolts as well. I've temporarily put the intake on with the mass airflow sensor connected. I am at a later date, once it arrives, going to do a cheeky little upgrade to that. For now, I'm going to lift the car up in the air and get the sump off and tackle the oil pickup pipe. Regards to a sump update, we are 90% there. Unfortunately, I started trying to get this sump off, and I was like, it is blinking tight. It's broken free on the gasket face just up here, but there are actually two sneaky little bolts in between the sump and the gearbox. You can just see the header one there, it's a little bit oily. And to get to it, it's up through that gap there. It's an extremely tight gap, and I can't actually get a socket up in there. I have started to grind down the chamfered edge of the socket to try and squeeze it up through, but that doesn't work. And I've even tried taking the bit out of the socket attachment and then just using a like 7mm quarter drive just to get up in there, as that's a little bit thinner, but that isn't reaching either. So I'm gonna have to leave that sump job for now and order up a really long socket piece basically. So this next bit I wasn't actually going to do until the car was fully built back together really, run up, all good, fluids and driven. However, because I've got a bit of a downtime waiting on some tools and parts, might as well just get on with it now. So this is the exhaust system for the car, completely standard, bar from the ends are being cut off, and it's got some Akrapovic tips on it, but it would be nice to have a little bit of extra noise over the stock system, because I think this car deserves a little bit of throatiness. So to get a little bit of extra noise out of this, my best bang for buck is to get rid of that center resonator and replace it with this. Essentially a straight pipe. So this piece literally goes there. So it bolts onto the original flange via the two bolts there, and then I have to measure back off of that and cut it, and then basically sleeve it on to the back box section.
So this exhaust pipe was by a company called Exhaustworks, bought it off eBay, just marked 7 inches back off there, cut that off, no problem, then just undoing the original bolts and bolting on to the new flange. Easy job, let's hope it is worth it.
The exhaust system is now back on the car, all bolted up. So original back box system, and then obviously my new join piece.
Another job I needed to do was the front brake pads. Now on the way back home, I did notice the warning light on the dash. When I checked the MOT history, it also had an advisory for front brake pads getting low. However, once again, this Alfa is causing me issues. Both pins on both sets of calipers were corroded. The force used trying to drive these out, even with a hot air gun and a bit of lubrication, has bent the brake pins, so this will need a new set. You know it's a hot one when you got water running out of the gloves. Ugh. Sweaty Betty. Ugh. And wow, take a look at this lower pin. That just shows how seized it is on that bush there, with a little bit of heat as well, tapping it through, and I thought, oh, it is coming. No, it's not. It's folded like a pretzel. 15-year-old Alfa Romeo, just don't buy one, all right? Just don't do it to yourself for your own sanity. So my solution for this was just doing a little cut with a mini angle grinder in that section there, and then prying out the other section, which then would then leave that last little seized bit into the caliper body.
It's a bit of a hands in the air, chill vibe. Okay. Just need to de-stress. That's my being honest.
Get out.
And now it's time to get back onto the sump removal. The tool had arrived, got both the bolts out, and then it's just a case of wiggling it down, working your way down past the subframe and anything that catches. Luckily, it came out.
So finally, the sump is off. A little bit of wiggling. Not the nicest of designs, but we've got there. And now we can have a good look at the bottom of the engine with the con rods above and the caps. Just looks like dirty oil in here, an old engine. Nothing looks untoward there. However, this is the oil seal I've come for to replace. So this looks like an original one, which is nice to see because I know I'm going to retrofit a much better version. And then looking at the sump, it basically just mates up onto that pickup point there, and it just wears and compresses over time. And then on cold startup particularly, or under load, as it's trying to pull the thick oil up through, it basically lets in a little bit of air where it's just not quite sealing properly anymore. Just gets brittle with the oil contamination and age basically. So I am going to be retrofitting a new part. So I do need to remove and clean this sump properly. So I think the best bet for this is going to be taking this baffling off and then putting some petrol in there, and then it's soaked to try and eat up most of the grime in there. Let's have a good look at it, get it nice and clean for reassembly. So this is the oil pickup pipe. That's the gauze at the bottom that basically sieves it up and then pumps it up through. There's a tiny little bit of a silicone gasket in the side of it, but other than that there's no metallic bits on it, and it looks pretty good. Cleaned, airlined through and dried. I've just used isopropyl alcohol on that because it's plastic. You don't want to be adding fuel to that. You don't know how it's going to react, but that is good to go. As with the top of the engine, it has got a lot of dark oil staining. Now this car does come with good documented service history, so I'm just struggling to understand what's really gone on with it. I think it's just been neglected over sort of the last year or so, particularly when you look at the build up down in here. It's very sludgy. There's no metallic metal, which is good. This whole engine though just seems to be caked in sort of like crap oil basically. I think although it's been serviced, I think maybe it's had cheap oil used, not fully synthetic and not the correct oil. So this is the seal in question for the low oil pressure warning that comes on quite a few different versions of the Alfa Romeo in different chassis. So this is it then. So a nice CNC made flange essentially with two seals on the outer side. I'll put a O-ring on there which gets supplied, and essentially you're basically going to bolt it onto the end of the pickup like that, and then this whole tapered edge sits up inside the block. That way it gives a much better seal rather than relying on basically sandwiching that old seal on that face and the block face. Now I'm going to leave this now overnight. I've cleaned the outer face off, the sealing face. Let that soak and see what it does. So this is the final outcome from the sump. Just got it drying off in the sun, but how good does that look overall? All the sludge has gone from the base of it now. So just a little clean off on the surface face before it goes back on with some RTV on it, and this should seal up lovely onto the block. Can take that off because we do have oil now. Perfect. So sounds really healthy actually. I've charged the battery up so it is turning over nicely and no nasty noises there. It sounds all good. So the brake pins have arrived, so now we can fix and finally sort out our brake calipers. So that is the new brake pins into the calipers with the new spring clips, anti-seize on that end and on that end, so hopefully it reduces the amount of corrosion build up for the next person when they come to change those pads. And I've also just done a quick soldering with heat shrink with a new connector piece. So I'll just loom tape this back up with the existing sheath in there, and then that will obviously plug into the brake pad wear sensor that comes obviously with the brake pads. Now with us almost at the point of starting the car, I have loosely fitted the air intake and the mass airflow sensor. However, modern cars these days all sound strangled, and well, if you've seen any of my other videos, I like to always do a little bit of modification, styling, just put my own touch on a build or repair, whatever I'm doing. One of the main essence is like ambience and noise and how it makes you feel. And with modern cars, I know this isn't new by any means, but they always seem, well, kind of dull. They always have to meet all these new targets and rules. So yeah, let's go ahead and do a slight modification to this car, which I'm hoping will give it a bit more character. So the basic intake pipe, which basically goes off of the elbow of the turbo, is just a classic plastic molded piece, and then you have the mass airflow sensor in the housing before it goes down to the airbox. And the airbox is massive on this. It's a big housing that kind of bolts in around this area behind the bumper. It is massive, look at the size of it. So I want to change this. Now there are aftermarket intake kit brands, especially Italian ones. By the time you get them here, because the only place I could find them in the UK was out of stock, import charges, delivery and all that sort of stuff, it's not worth it. It really isn't. So I'm going ahead with a little bit of trial and error. I've done a little bit of searching, and I've basically bought separate pipes and bits and pieces, and I'm basically going to hopefully put it all together and make my own induction kit. And this is it. So we got a big old cone filter by K&N, and then we have this intake pipe piece, which is all silicone, which is designed for this car, so we know we're not going to have any problems there. That will replace that part there. The next part is a gamble. It is with this 90-degree elbow piece, and basically the one end is going to have the mass airflow sensor in, and then the other end is going to house the filter. I've also got this little reducer piece, which was basically for a gas flue, I think. So it's super lightweight, but it just means I can house the intake pipe and the air filter, and then when I clamp them together, it doesn't just fold this down, because obviously this is very pliable. So yeah, you need a little metal reducer sleeve in there to make it all grip together. And then I got some nice fancy black smoked graphite clamps. So this should all come together, and I'm hoping it will basically run in the usual spot there, sensor, and then the elbow brings out the filter somewhere around here. Oh my goodness, look how naughty that looks. Now the fit is very, very good. I'm happy with that. However, placement wise, that's as best I can get it. I do need to offer up the bumper. I cannot wait to hear this now. Hopefully it should give us a little bit more noise, give us a little bit more character, maybe a little bit of whooshing or flutter from the turbo. But yeah, that will be lovely. So we're now at the final stage before starting the car, and that is filling it with coolant. Now I'm not going to fill it up with coolant straight away, and the main reason for that is this car had a lot of that head gasket fluid in it, which was just bunged up everywhere. It wasn't getting warm through to the cabin, and that is a telltale sign that the heater matrix core, the bit itself, which I think is behind the dashboard, has probably blocked up. It's putting a hose on the inlet and the outlet and flushing it basically. So there's two hoses there, and they basically go into the bulkhead through there and to that matrix itself. Now I do believe if I take the hoses off and put a dummy hose on both, one to like a bucket so the fluid doesn't go everywhere, and the other to a little attachment I've bought, we can then apply water pressure through, back cleaning it so it pushes it back out the way it came in, and hopefully that may remedy it.
We were talking about Lando Norris. It's really difficult there.
So essentially all we're doing is we're feeding in water via air pressure, and because we've had so much build up of that head gasket sealant stuff, basically I'm thinking it's all stuck on the right hand side, so it's just not allowing the hot water to pass through it and go out of the left hand side. I am really hoping this works and we see quite a lot of that pinky red stuff, silt almost coming out of the system. The airline now. And hopefully this works. God, that scared the living daylights out of me. Sprayed me, but on the good note, I can see fluid coming out of it. So it's looking pretty clean here now. However, the first bit of it was proper orange. So I'm gonna apply the airline again, because this is just running by the tap at the moment. Let's see if we can get any more out of it. Oh yeah. Let's pull this out and have a look and see. Okay, so it's not... Oh, there's some sludge. Hard to pick up on the camera, but there's basically little bits of sediment here that I can see now on the floor. And oh, here we go. Here we go, money shot. So here are loads of bits. Oh, it's breaking down with my fingers now. So yeah, if you can see that in the water, that is dried lumps of that sealant stuff. So let's go again, let's flush again. Oh my goodness, here we go. Wow. So I've now completed doing that heater matrix flush, probably done 5 buckets or so, and it is now looking a lot clearer. So I've now just connected it all back up and filled the system with just pure water at the moment, just so we can get it running and check for any leaks. And then I'll go for a speed flush with water, dump that out, and then go for fresh coolant. So there's oil in the car, and I'm at the point now where I can't see why I cannot start this car. Although I'm kind of nervous. I mean, it's the classic story where watching it behind the screen, it kind of seems relatively easy, but the amount of time and effort put in, here we go. So I've got the keys. So will it start first time? Let's hope so. Any lights on the dash? No warning lights, so that is a good thing. So yeah, I guess now let's just start it. Oh my goodness. Well, it runs, which I am bloody relieved about. I could definitely hear a change in sort of oil pressure, or the solenoids doing something with variable valve timing as it dropped off, because it did go briefly ticky and then it stopped. The high pressure fuel pump is loud. It looked okay, and I know they are loud anyway, and that is now the prime ticky noise from this engine. It sounds a lot smoother. It isn't as lumpy now either. And it's only right we do a quick little exhaust video as well, see what it sounds like. Oil level is good, check that, can't see any obvious leaks, so fab news. Just draining the coolant out of it again, putting in that speed flush, and then we'll run it up and then drain that out and put fresh in after that, ready to go. Well, you join me. I'm on my second warm-up with that speed flush in there, and I was holding the RPM up higher than idle basically with the heater on maximum, just to try and get the heat through it as per the instruction of the speed flush. So I'm guessing it just wants it firing it through the whole system to try and clean it. As I came off the throttle to return to idle, it started running really lumpy. The way it was running was exactly what it was like when I was driving it home and I brought it back. So once it got up to temperature, a bit hotter, that weird rough idle started. Now I have got an engine light come back on, thankfully, so it helps with a bit of traceability, and it is saying about the camshaft position sensor A. Now I've had a quick look, 340 code I think it is, and it is the sensor for the exhaust side. Now that was in there when I originally scanned the car before doing all of this work. So that fault is still existent clearly. I was a little bit worried when I first got this car, when that idling did happen to me on the way home, that there could be an issue with the worn variators. Now, the fact that it's had oil pressure warning lights on and the condition of how the oil looked from being inside the engine on removal of parts, like quite scorched and dark oil, I wonder if that exhaust variator, which is the one that seems to be the problem, or the exhaust timing as such, I wonder if that is worn past serviceability now. It kind of sounds like that, the way it like clatters. So on that note, I am going to end this video right here. So on a positive takeaway, it is running. I don't have any oil pressure warning lights on, so that is a good thing. Now just ironing out another issue. Yeah. Also with the car running up to temperature with the heating on, it isn't getting warm inside. So unfortunately we have another issue there. It is all fun and games. Thank you ever so much for watching this video. Drop us a like, drop us a comment. As always, stay safe and I'll catch you in the next one.